I'm one of those people that continuous improvement is just kind of my thing. Nothing is perfect. I will always be tinkering and always making changes to try and make things better. So I need an organisation that is kind of starting behind the 8 ball or needs a bit of an overhaul. That's kind of what I need. Everyone that is at the organisation is there not for money. They're there because they love what they do. And our paramedics in particular put up with a lot of stuff. The biggest stat, I suppose, in my role while I was there that concerned me the most was the occupational violence statistics. Without NAJA, the justice system in the Northern Territory kind of falls apart. The last 12 to 24 months has been really hard for NAJA as well from a funding perspective. We've seen an increase on average in about 25% workload for our staff members and no funding increase at all. The Shadows of Anthia is the title. It's been a bit of a passion project. I started writing this back in after I finished grade 12 when I was really young. But they sort of said I wasn't going to make it as an author, so I needed to get a real degree. It's one of those things that I sort of, when I picked it back up, it was a bit of a, I'm going to do this to prove everyone wrong that thought that I couldn't publish a book. And not long after it was released, Amazon had it in its hottest new book releases in the top 20 for about 2 months. It's actually still in the top 30 at the moment.
Welcome to Yarramah Territory. Here we provide professional horse riding lessons for beginners right up to advanced riders. People love finding that deeper connection with horses. We're proud that our services offer a positive mental well-being, and it's just a great place to come, de-stress and relax.
Ryan Cooney, thanks for joining us on the NextGen North podcast.
Yeah, no problem.
So you've been a recent recipient of the Territory Leader of the Year award by the NT News in the Emerging Leader category. So I want to say, first of all, congratulations for that. Well deserved.
Thank you.
Can you just tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, look, I think my team are the culprits there, but I won't know for sure.
Very humble.
Informations are anonymous, but I think my team are probably the culprits there. I've got probably the best team in the world, so a leader's nothing without a good team.
So that's how it comes about, is it? Someone has to nominate you for the award?
I believe so, actually. I didn't really know much about it until I got the nomination, and then I did like the quick Google search, what is going on here.
Yeah. So. Oh, that's good recognition within your own team then.
Yeah.
So what sort of work have you done previously that sort of cultivated your own personal leadership qualities, might you say?
Yeah, I have a bit of a untraditional background to where I got to, I think. I moved up to the Territory, I'm probably 8.5 years into my 2-year plan now. When I first moved up here, I was managing hotel groups. So I moved up to work in Katherine, Northern Territory.
Yep.
And I was managing Travel North. I moved over to 80 Mile Hospitality before sort of taking on my first corporate services manager role at an Aboriginal organisation that was Kalano Community Association. I spent quite a good chunk there at Kalano and did a lot of really good work in the community. I probably wouldn't have left if my partner didn't need a Kmart, but I loved Katherine. It was a really good time. It was really good for my development as well. If you want to develop into a really good leader and do it quickly, go somewhere extremely remote where you won't just do one thing. You'll do 30 different things that you're probably a little bit unprepared for, but you learn very quickly. And I had a lot of good people around me. I still to this day probably consider Barry Ruddy, the CFO at the time, as one of the biggest mentors that I've had. Then from there, I moved up to Darwin. I spent a bit of time at council, and then I kind of got bounced around. I got poached a little bit a few times. So I went to Catholic education for a short stint, and then quite a large stint again at St. John Ambulance before joining NAJA.
Wow.
And NAJA's kind of, it's interesting. When I was doing my law degree, I was finishing it in Katherine.
While you're at Kalano?
Yeah. Yep. So I was finishing my law degree in Katherine, and NAJA was always on the list. It was like I always wanted to be a civil lawyer for NAJA. That was the intention.
Right.
But by the time I graduated, my career had kind of gone so far to the right at that point that by the time I got there, it was it was almost a backward step to go back and be a civil lawyer. So I never ended up at NAJA. But then this role kind of came available, and it was perfect because it was what I do now in the organisation that I always wanted to work for. So
yeah, great. We actually had a gentleman on from Kalano last year, NAJA Cassian. I'm not sure if you're aware of him.
No, not familiar.
But he was doing some really exciting stuff in the Indigenous housing space. So, I mean, we can talk about Kalano, I think, in a bit, but it's interesting that you came from, I guess, almost a hospo accommodation sort of background with a view to getting into, law and that sort of thing. Where are you from originally?
Gold Coast, actually.
Gold Coast, okay.
Yeah, I grew up my entire life on the Gold Coast.
And what drew you to the territory?
A couple of different things. A little bit of peace and quiet probably was one thing. I was an athlete growing up. I know a lot of people know me on the Gold Coast. All my family lives there, and I kind of just wanted to make my own way a little bit. I got a job offer up here out of the blue as well. I didn't really apply. I met Werner I was working for a Marriott hotel at the time, and I met him through that hotel group, and he sort of asked me to come and help out. I had an interview then, and that was sort of the end of it. I ended up in the territory, but it was a weird move. It was never on the cards. I never thought I'd be living and working in the territory, but now I won't be leaving. Like, I love it up here. Time? Yeah, we built a house about 3 years ago, and we live there now. We just had my daughter. She's 2 years old, Primrose.
Awesome, congratulations.
And yeah, she's the first Territorian in my family. So
oh well, let's hope there's many more. Many more to come. Looking at your resumes, you've worked for some interesting places, St. John's, for the Catholic education, Kalano. So you obviously like a challenge, it seems.
Yeah, I think what attracted me the most about those kinds of organizations is that there's a lot to do. They're in the public eye a lot, and there's a lot to improve. I'm one of those people that continuous improvement is just kind of my thing.
Yep.
There's nothing is perfect. I will always be tinkering and always making changes to try and make things better. So I need an organization that is kind of starting behind the eight ball or needs a bit of an overhaul. That's kind of what I need.
Right.
And that I do that quite well. That's sort of my specialty, I suppose, is coming in and doing a bit of a cultural shift.
Right. Because looking at somewhere like St. John's, I mean, I know they've had their problems not just locally, but interstate, so with local, I think they were having some problems with funding and, there was some governance issues or questions from local government. And then I guess interstate, particularly in places like South Australia, I think they had some issues, and it might have been Victoria too, with ramping. Do you experience those issues when you're at St. John's, or like what were the sort of the main issues when you were there?
Look, it's interesting. I think from the outside, St. John gets a lot of media coverage, but from the inside, it's a really, really good place to work.
Well, it's such an important institution.
Yeah.
Right.
Like everyone that is it's a bit like NAJA in that sense, but everyone that is at the organization is there not for money. They're there because they love what they do. And our paramedics in particular put up with a lot of stuff. The biggest stat, I suppose, in my role while I was there that concerned me the most was the occupational violence statistics for paramedics. Look, there's a lot. There's been a lot of reviews, but I think they've also been blown out of proportion a little bit as well. The reviews were initiated by St. John. It wasn't like someone came in and initiated these those reviews.
That's healthy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can
so
ask others to be, well, I don't know if it was an independent review or how that worked, but if you can sort of, leave yourself to be vulnerable enough to say, look, there are things wrong. Let's figure them out. I think that's a sign of a healthy organization in some respects. Yeah,
I think in some sense, St. John has a very unionized workforce, and the union is very that particular union very much wants to move towards the government ambulance space. And I think that's why you tend to see a lot of this negative press, negative media. But the organization itself has probably when I left at least, was in one of the best places it's been from a governance perspective. Yeah, they were going through lots of internal audits, but again, they initiated all of them. They'd redone all of the culture, appointed a really good executive team at the time. Sadly, Andrew Toombs has left now, but yeah, look, it's a great organization to work. I couldn't say a bad thing about St. John. I probably didn't want to leave there too much, but I was grateful that I could take half my team with me.
Yep. All right. They followed you, did they?
Yeah. No, look, as I said at the start, I have one of the best teams in the world, and I've built and cultivated them, and I wasn't quite finished with all of them. So I took the ones I wasn't finished with me so that I can continue to mentor them.
Great. So you found yourself at NAJA as the People Operations Manager.
Yeah.
So obviously, yeah, like I said before, you like a challenge. So what does your role entail at NAJA?
Yeah, I actually joined NAJA as the HR manager. I come with a bit of a different background though than most HR people. There's not a lot of us that has that skill set in health and safety, learning and development, and HR. So I ended up as the people operations manager after about 2 or 3 months there. The CEO and the deputy CEO who I report to, Matt Connor, both sort of came together and realized that I had that skill set. And yeah, so I look after at NAJA our compliance, our people and culture, which is encompassing that HR, our well-being, our work health and safety, learning and development, all of that sort of sits underneath me.
Okay.
We have a team of 4 in total, so it's not a huge team, but much bigger than NAJA of the past, I think, in terms of that space. But yeah, it was a big challenge coming in. I probably shouldn't have Googled it, the organization, but it didn't scare me off in a way. In a way, it kind of excited me because everyone that is left at NAJA, every single person that is there now, just love the work that they're doing. The internal culture is really quickly growing at the moment, which is great. And everyone's really dedicated to the work that we're doing there. So it's a good organization. Yeah, they went through a little bit of a patchy spot, but I think we're more than past that spot. And we have some really good independent directors, some really good Aboriginal board members at the moment as well. And our governance is probably the best I've ever seen NAJA. And I've known NAJA for a really long time.
Great. Well, I think before we get into sort of the nuts and bolts of it, we've got a picture. Tom, are you able to just pull up a picture of NAJA? I think there's one there with Ryan's staff. No, I think, yeah, those. So can you tell us a little bit about these guys and you know, what their roles are and all? You know? Yeah,
for sure. The far right there, that's Hannah Europeus. She is my HR officer at NAJA. She is one of the ones that followed me from St. John, actually.
Okay.
Hannah was my people and culture administrator at St. John. She was incredible there, and I was sort of getting her into the business partner space when I was leaving, and I needed her over at NAJA, so I brought her in that role. She is a future HR leader. I wouldn't be surprised if she's the one sitting in this chair in a few years' time. She's very good. Sonia in the middle there next to Hannah, she is our workforce development coordinator.
Yep.
She's been with NAJA for about a decade, really long time. She bounced around from a whole bunch of different roles at NAJA. And has really found a place, I think, within my team. I know that she actively says that to people now. She's found a really good place with us. She's one of my Aboriginal staff members and really brings the cultural component to my team and makes us think about things in a different way.
Okay.
Sean's actually not part of my team on the left there. That's Sean Pearce. That's actually Hannah's dad.
Right, yeah.
Sean Pearce is the CEO of Ironbark. But Hannah's dad, this is just at a black coffee event run by Nicole Brown. But yeah, we also have Tiffany, who is the last member of our team. Tiffany came over from New Zealand earlier this year. She's our resident wellbeing and recruitment guru, but people and culture officer is her title. She has completely reshaped the well-being for staff at NAJA and will continue to do so. And from a recruitment perspective as well, increased our recruitment by something like 180%. So
wow,
yeah, awesome.
Well, it seems like you're cultivating a good culture there.
Yeah, we've got a great team, and it's easy to do things like that with a really good team.
Mm-hmm. Well, we recently had, well, not recently, I must say, must have been sort of late 2024. Anyway, we had John Lawrence, the barrister and former head of NAJA, and Chris Walsh on this podcast discussing NAJA, who were also, must say, fairly critical of NAJA. How was that criticism received internally? Did many of you guys watch that? Or
yeah, look, I think a lot of staff members have seen the episode. I think each of them will have their different views. For me, as someone that wasn't with the organisation at the time, I sort of took it as a challenge a little bit. I think the organisation, interestingly, one way or another, whether it was as a result of that podcast, I don't know. I don't think so. But they took a lot of it on board as well. Like one of the things discussed was certainly around independent directors. And, you know, if you look at NAJA now, that's what we've got. We've got some really, really good independent directors there, but we've also got some really, really good qualified Aboriginal board members as well. And that's great too.
Yep. So NAJA services Indigenous clientele, and I understand that there's, you know, overrepresentation of Indigenous people within the criminal justice system, you know, huge amounts of people on remand at the moment. So why is it important that an institution like NAJA is stable, is funded adequately, you know, has enough staffing, all that sort of stuff?
Oh, I think without NAJA, the justice system in the Northern Territory kind of falls apart.
Yep.
The last 12 to 24 months has been really hard for NAJA as well from a funding perspective. With the new government coming in, we've seen an increase on average in about 25% workload for our staff members.
Okay.
And no funding increase at all.
So NAJA is fully federally funded, is that right?
Yeah. So we don't get any funding from the Northern Territory government for our legal services.
Okay.
We do have some smaller programs that aren't our civil or our criminal law firm that do receive some small amounts of funding from the Northern Territory government, but we're almost entirely funded by the federal government.
Because there was some questions, or I don't know if you could call it criticism by the federal government about whether they would continue the same funding model for NAJA. Has that situation resolved itself, or where's that at in terms of funding? Do you guys have enough money? Do you need more? Is that a silly question? You could always use more money, I guess, but
it's sort of a two-part question. Yes, it's resolved itself. We've secured a funding agreement for the next 5 years. That's been signed, sealed, delivered. We haven't received any increase to funding, despite the fact that, like I said, 25% extra work, more Aboriginal people than ever in custody. But from a funding perspective, no, we don't have the funding that we ideally need to run the services. We had to make some really tough calls this year. We had to cut some positions at NAJA that, again, ideally the organisation did need them.
Okay.
We were lucky that we didn't have people in those roles at the time. We've also had to make some really tough calls with our money. You know, from a development perspective for our staff, we've had to reduce the training and development budget to quite a minuscule amount. We are not allowed to use our funding on certain things as well that other organisations are. So, for example, we're not allowed to use it in the staff wellbeing space, or the reward and recognition to help retain staff. That makes it really difficult to then, retain staff, but also manage the significant vicarious trauma load that our staff have in the caseload that they're going through. Being a lawyer at NAJA is tough compared to, I suppose, being a lawyer at a private law firm where they might do 20 clients or so. We're doing a minimum of 4 times that, actually probably more. Our lawyers do a ton of work for very little recognition, very little reward. And yeah, we can't use our funding for it. So it can be really tough. I think look, from an outside in, obviously Legal Aid got a bit of money from the territory government. We got nothing.
Okay.
And it would be great if there was some additional magic bucket somewhere. But I also appreciate that the territory is in a bit of debt at the moment too. So
Sure. And how is NAJA's relationship, I guess, with the federal politicians in the territory? So, we've got 3 out of 4 politicians in the upper and lower houses of the federal government. 3 of them are Indigenous. So, you'd think that they would sort of be fairly in tune with the plight of Indigenous peoples caught up in the criminal justice system. So what is NAJA's relationship with those guys? Is it good? Could it use work? Is that a way to, I guess, leverage NAJA's situation to try and get more funding so that you can solve the things that you just mentioned?
Yeah, look, I think NAJA's every day we're getting closer and closer to a bit of a seat at the table, I suppose. Our CEO at the moment, Ben Grimes, is amazing. He's had a lot of meetings, I know, with some local members, and is certainly cultivating a lot of those relationships. It's probably not my wheelhouse, so to speak.
Okay.
I focus more on the internal. Ben Grimes would focus more on the external. But
Yep.
I know that NAJA has, when NAJA talks, people listen. Yeah, we recently issued a media release, and over 10,000 people have seen or engaged with that media release in and around our funding. So it just goes to show that, yeah, when we say something, there is an audience, and people want to know what's going on with our organisation.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of stability in the top brass of the organisation, I think you've said that it's stabilised somewhat. I know that there was a former CEO, I believe, that took NAJA to court for a wrongful termination. Have things like that started to resolve themselves as well? Where are things like that at?
Yeah, so that situation's all resolved. Our executive team are all permanent. There's no more acting this and acting that. Okay. And we have an amazing executive team. I can't talk more highly about them. Ben Grimes has come in and just instantly taught so many of the managers just little things. From a cultural perspective, he has so much knowledge that I feel like for the next 5 or 10 years, this is where I want to be to learn off someone like that. Okay. Then you have Matt Connott. Matt's pretty green, but he is amazing as well. I report directly through to Matt. He's been a really big help for me for my first 12 months, getting a really good understanding of NAJA and the history of NAJA and the Aboriginal people. Matt is a very proud Aboriginal man himself, born in the Northern Territory, and he's an Aboriginal lawyer too. Fantastic guy. And then Anna Gill joined us recently as the PLO, Principal Legal Officer. Okay. Anna has a massive amount of experience as well in that space, and has already started influencing some of our internal legal governance as well from a policy perspective. So yeah, really great executive team. Then you have Manik, our CFO. His resume kind of speaks for himself. He's probably the most publicly known of the 4. But yeah, they're a really good team. They're very stable. They're all locked down on longer term contracts now. And I think NAJA in that space is in the best spot that we've been in a really long time.
So you're sort of fairly hopeful about the next, say, 5 to 10 years of NAJA and where it's going? Yeah,
look, I think it's an exciting time to be at NAJA, and that's showing by like our recruitment and our retention is the best it's ever been. Okay. We have the lowest vacancy rate NAJA's had since September 2021.
Yep.
Which is huge for NAJA as well. So yeah, it's been good. It's the most stable we've been.
Awesome. And look, amongst your many obvious talents, you've also recently published a book.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the book? What sort of thematics are in it? What's the story without giving too much away? Yeah.
Yeah, look, The Shadows of Anthia is the title. It's been a bit of a passion project. I started writing this back in just after I finished grade 12 when I was really young. I sort of put it down in university. When I first went to Griffith University, I started studying a Bachelor of Arts, and I was majoring in Japanese and creative writing. My parents at the time sort of said, what are you going to do with that degree? And I decided to transfer into law because they had a good point. But they sort of said I wasn't going to make it as an author, so I needed to get a real degree. So I went into the law degree, and I put it aside and didn't work on it, even though it was finished. I just kind of put it aside and didn't work on it for a good chunk, almost a decade in hindsight. I picked it back up in 2023. And I sort of rewrote it from a more adult perspective, in a sense. I went back and really tore it apart and put it back together.
Is that the audience? Is it an adult audience?
Oh, it's a young adult for sure. Sort of 15 to 25, 26 range is the ideal audience, I would say. The character himself is at the start of the book in his last year of high school. So it's quite a later on in the teenage years. But by the second book, which I actually just recently announced, by the second book, he's an adult at that point. So it's a fantasy novel. It's a little bit of science fiction. It's been a passion project of mine.
So we've got the cover up there. So what is that? That's a strong cover. It must be said. What's the symbolism or the iconism, or what? How would you describe that?
Yeah, look, there's two characters in the book. There's a character named Liz and a character named Sam. Liz has some powers to manipulate electricity, and Sam has some power. Liz and Jess. Jess has the electricity powers, and Liz has fire powers, and you've got the front and the back cover, fire and electricity there. They kind of go at it quite a bit in the book. So that's what the cover design is all about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so how has it been received?
It's been good, actually. Surprisingly, this was one of those things that I sort of, when I picked it back up, it was a bit of a I'm going to do this to prove everyone wrong that thought that I couldn't publish a book.
Okay.
But I was going to self-publish. I had no intention of getting it published. My nan was the one that sort of said, "Nah, you got to send it to publishers." And there's a little message in the book about my nan who really inspired a lot of my creativity. But I think the book itself has it's sort of been a passion project for a really long time, and I just wanted it to. I wanted people to read it. I noticed that not long after it was released, Amazon had it in its hottest new book releases in the top 20 for about 2 months.
Wow.
It's actually still in the top 30 at the moment.
Amazing.
So, it's getting around. And
do you think that has a big part to play with actually getting it published, with a publisher as opposed to self-publishing? And can you just maybe go into some of the nuance between the two?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't do a lot of research when I was planning on self-publishing it. I didn't think too much about it, to be honest. But when I had the finalized manuscript, I started doing a bit of research into like Kindle Direct Publishing and things like that. And then my nan just sort of went, "No, here's a list of places that you need to send this off to."
Oh, wow.
And I sent it off to a bunch of places, and I actually had 3 offers. I chose Olympia. They were one of the better offers, Olympia Publishers. And that was kind of the end of it. But there's a very big difference, obviously. You're direct publishing, you're financing it all. You've got to do all the marketing and stuff like that.
And you don't have probably access to these huge distribution networks.
Yeah, exactly. Like my book's up on Barnes and Noble and all the big book selling retail places that I wouldn't be able to get it to if I was self-publishing the book.
So you better retire early then.
I don't know actually. I haven't actually looked at the tracking for the book. I'll know come December. That's the first time that they start talking about royalties and things like that. But I never really did it for money, and all of the money will just go back into my foundation that I run as well. So
you'll have to tell us about that in a bit. But I just wanted to stay on topic of the book first. So in terms of creative writing, where does that motivation come from? Was that something that was just inherent within you? Was it something that was developed by, say, a mentor or just an interest of yours?
That's got to come from my nan, I think, a little bit. it was certainly unlocked by my high school library teachers at St. Stephen's College, but my nan used to, when we were kids, she used to off the top of her head, create this story about Barry the Bin. And every time we would go over to Nan's, which was a lot, she would add a new chapter or two about Barry the Bin.
Right.
And it got to the stage where I wish to this day I'd written it down. It would have made an incredible children's book series. But she really just ignited our imagination as kids, and she's the driving force behind my imagination. In terms of St. Stephen's College, there's some library teachers there. I used to hang around in the library. In about year 11 it was, I hated books and I hated reading until year 11. And then about year 11, there was this girl I really liked at the time, and I would hang around in the library and annoy the crap out of the library teachers because I'm really loud. And Nolene, one of the library teachers at the time, walked over to me one day with the Hunger Games and said, "You're reading this or you're not allowed back in the library."
Right.
So she gives me this book, and then I got hooked. That was my first ever book series that I really got hooked into. And then it was just one after the next between her and Rebecca Horry, the other library teacher. They just kept giving me book series after book series after book series. And then I was loving it. At that point, I was sold. I was a reader and I was a writer.
Mm-hmm. Well, are you sort of in the Game of Thrones world? Because I guess with the elemental sort of side of things, fire and ice and lightning and all that sort of stuff, there's a bit of George R.R. Martin about it.
Yeah, a little bit. To be honest with you, I get a lot of inspiration from sort of Pittacus Lore, and which is like your I Am Number 4 books, and then the Aragon series, which is very similar to Game of Thrones. Okay. So that's probably why it seems a bit like that. I never really got into Game of Thrones, to be honest with you, but I really did like those really core fantasy novels.
Mm-hmm. And you've published under your own name.
Yeah.
Was there any consideration to publish under a pseudonym or anything like that, to just maybe keep it anonymous?
Yeah, when it was me, like when I was going to go and self-publish, yes. Mm-hmm. And then I sort of got talked out of it by my publisher. They suggested it would be better to go under my own name. So
why is that?
I think it's just for your first book, it's better recognition, better to... You can self-market it. Credibility as well, yeah. It can be attached to, some of the awards and the nominations and things like that as well. So, yeah.
And what were the negotiations with those big publishers like? Is it quite intimidating going in there with your manuscript in hand, and you don't want to blow it or anything like that, or is it pretty casual affair?
It's not as weird as you would, like as big and scary as you would imagine. Like you honestly just, at the first instance, you just send your book off to like 100 places and then you pray. Mm-hmm. Or in my case, you just don't care until someone comes back to you. Right. And then they sort of just come back to you with offers. Mm-hmm. I didn't really do too much of again, with my first book, I didn't really do too much of a negotiation phase. I don't have an agent or anything like that. So it was just kind of, I looked at the 3 offers I have. I have a background in contract law, and I picked the one that I liked the most. And I didn't do too much in there. They did all the work for me, I suppose. So it wasn't as big and intimidating as what I thought it would be. Okay. It got a lot more intimidating when we were getting to like release phase, and we were talking about, are you now comfortable with all the edits on this book and things like that? And what you start with, compared to what they publish, is slightly different as well. Right. So you got to compromise on little bits and pieces that you might love that won't resonate with your audience. So. Yeah.
So is that just editorial control? Is that like they've sort of got ultimate final say because they're the ones with the checkbook?
Yeah, exactly. So depending on where you are in your writing career, I think that changes. Sure. Like if this book took off and my second book was to go to a bigger publisher, for example, I might have a little bit more, or even with my other publisher, I'll probably have a little bit more leeway this time with my second book. But the first one is all about making sure that it's available to the biggest audience possible.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I can't wait to read my copy. So guys, go out and grab a copy of that. For any aspiring authors, because I've just gotten back into reading myself, probably due to my having to put my daughter to sleep. I've got a 2-year-old and a 10-month-old at the moment. And she always wants me to tell her a story about a pink dragon or a green dragon or a red dragon every single night before she goes to sleep. And then we play some nursery rhymes for a while. And then so I've got my Kindle next to her while she's falling asleep. So I started reading the reading process again. I think, I wouldn't mind trying to pen my own book. So for someone like me who might be an aspiring author, what sort of tips do you have for them how to get started?
I think it starts with like exactly what you're talking about, but you got to get those ideas when you're making up a story with your kids or whatever it is. Whenever my book kind of started with me like almost acting it out in my shower in a way, and then I would get out of the shower and I'd quickly jump onto OneNote and I'd be putting all of this into OneNotes, and it started with like 20 OneNote stories of the same thing that I just kept thinking where it could go next.
Okay.
It's a bit like my nan's Barry the Bin story, but you've got to get that idea and put it on paper somewhere really quickly, even if it's just a couple of dot points about this is where I want to take it next. And then like the writing process is really not that hard. You don't have to be an amazing, like really good at English or anything like that. There's lots of technology to help you with that these days. There's Grammarly that can help you choose words.
You don't need to be Shakespearean.
You don't have to be a fancy word writer to write a book. You've just got to have a really cool idea that people will resonate with. And then the words, that's something that also your publisher can help you with too. They make little bits of changes to terminology and sentence structure too, depending on what publisher you get.
Awesome. You mentioned your own foundation.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
It's a little one. I started that back in 2021, Fair Go Association. I have done quite a lot of work through there. I don't do too much. It's not funded by anyone. I self-fund it. I do lots of little industrial relations matters. I recently had a matter, a hairdresser. I probably won't say where, but I had a hairdresser recently who decided to leave their company. The company then tried to sue them in the small claims court for a breach of confidentiality and working for stealing their clients and all this sort of stuff.
Okay. So it's in a legal space.
It's in the legal space. It's more industrial advocacy because I'm not, I don't have a practicing certificate. But I do a lot of work with unfair dismissal, discrimination, that sort of thing. I work a lot with Indigenous clients. That's where the passion comes from for NAJA as well. But it's a space that not a lot of free services are available. Like NAJA doesn't have an employment law division. We do have discrimination, but we don't have an employment law division. Legal aid doesn't have an employment law division. So there's not a lot of free support in that space. And a lot of those people are just left out in the lurch, and they are very often unfairly treated. So I sort of self-funded. It's usually not a lot of money. It's my time really, and the occasional application fee to the Fair Work Commission or things like that for people. But I do quite a lot of work in that space, and I quite enjoy it. I hope that once I finish my second book, I can sort of go back to doing a bit more work in that space. It's hard to do, your book, your volunteering, and your and my Fair Go Association. But yeah,
awesome. Well, look, I think that's a really good, contextual background about what you've got going on. It seems like you've won a lot of awards and you're doing really good work in the community. But we like to give you guys a bit of an opportunity on this podcast just to promote what it is you've got going on, whether that be NAJA or your second book. So if you just want to stare straight into that camera there and just let us know what Ryan Cooney's got on next.
Yeah, awesome. Obviously The Shadows of Anthia just came out. That's available just about anywhere. Amazon's certainly the cheapest. Darwin Bookshops just about to get some in stock as well. So head over there to have a look out for The Prince of Xanthia, the sequel that's coming out in 2027. And yeah, look, NAJA, come work for us. It's a great place to work. The culture's never been as good as it is. And if you want somewhere where you can see the value of your work, whether it's in finance, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's an administrator, NAJA's the place to work.
Awesome. All right, guys, you heard it there. Go and grab Ryan's book and get a job at NAJA. They're doing good things there and they've turned the place around. So really appreciate your time today, Ryan. And guys, like and subscribe. It really helps us with the algorithm, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks guys.
So much.
See ya.